you told me how excited you'd be for this one meeting. So yeah.
So we're live. We're just a couple minutes early, but because I thought that was an interesting conversation. I literally pressed live.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Just to remind everyone.
I didn't put all your stories on there of the names and people that really pissed you off. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. But once again, it's like scheduling and trying to find people and kind of contacting with people and seeing who can do it, who can't do it. Like that's a big part of running a game is that like management between different people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there are people who are really great GMs. Like if they can get a table together, they're awesome, but they can't get a table together because they can't handle the scheduling and that kind of stuff.
Here in England, if we thought most of the time like, oh yeah, we'll just call a friend in America to play like video games, that's considered as normal. But if you're trying to do it for tabletops, everyone's like, what are you doing? That's insane. That's like the craziest thing ever. And so therefore you always have to find someone local. And I think I'm safe here to actually say their names, but I don't think it's really pointful. But the actual reason as to why I say it is because I'd have to call everyone up on my own, like literally phone call them, because I'd send messages to them on Facebook, text messages, and they wouldn't get it. And then on the day, if we missed their part of the session, then they'd be like, "Oh, why didn't you call me? I really wanted to do this, that, and the other. I really wanted to get some levels." And it's like, I've been messaging you. It's like, why didn't you call me? It's like, don't expect me to call you. That is the last thing that I'm going to do of the day. If you don't pick up, that's not my fault. You know who you are, Cordell.
Ooh, called out.
That's my best friend. He hasn't been in a session for like 3 months.
But I think I do understand that like playing online is a little bit weird, and one of the reasons why is because most of the time we play tabletop. Well, at least for me, I play tabletop with, I get along with these people. I know these people in real life. Let's get a session together. And so it's kind of in online games, it's a little bit the reverse, where it's like I want to play a game, so I'm going to find people who are free to play with, and so and that's kind of similar to like. There are some GMs who have online services of like, pay for me to be your GM. And to a lot of people, it's just really weird. Like, even to me, it's kind of weird, but it's like because...
There are people that do that for payment?
Yeah.
Why am I not doing this? Thank you for the idea.
And once again, it's like, it's because they want to have like, okay, the GM puts in a lot of work. And so the idea is they're getting paid for their service or something and doing it with strangers. But it's weird because it's like, these are people I want to hang out with. You know, I'm not there to play a game. I'm there to hang out with people.
Yeah. It kind of makes it like a job too. You're not really putting a lot of creativity. You know, if you were being paid to be a GM, I mean, if somebody's able to do it, that's great. But like for me, I probably wouldn't, because it's like I would feel more pressure into getting it right because people are paying me and I need to do, I need to be able to deliver that service kind of thing.
Yeah, when you talk about like paid GMing, like for me, that would be so weird just because it's like, this is something I do for fun and I read people and stuff like that. And the second you add money into the equation, like it changes the whole dynamic, because suddenly it's like, you're held to a standard and it's like, it's got to be a particular way, and they're customers and stuff, and you're not friend kind of relationship. It's like employee boss kind of a thing. That's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the most dangerous thing. The idea is that the second that you go, yeah, money could be involved, they're like, go on. And it, as you said, it changes the dynamic. But one of the worst parts is actually if money is expected to be spent, rather than if someone's expected to be paid. Money is expected to be spent. Like I went over to a mate's, I brought all of the stuff, and he said, "Oh, did you want to get some drinks? Do you want to drink and have some fun?" Now, normally I wouldn't mind if it was over a table session. We had a couple of ciders or a couple of beers or something, but he wanted to literally get drunk that night, and I was like, "Yeah, we can't really play this game whilst drinking, especially if I'm the DM, because I am not going to be coherent enough."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just you know what? Yeah, you all get 20s and you'll win. Can we? Oh jeez, my stomach feels really bad, guys.
Yeah, I did know a lot of players who, when they would play, they would get like really hammered, but it was because we'd play some games where it was like heavily combat based, and where it was like, okay, I rolled the dice, I add the number, here's the damage, or something, and so they would get like this was 4th edition, and so they get really drunk when they were playing. It's just like, oh, you don't need me for role playing.
Nope.
No.
Well, thank you both again for spending time with me. And, you know, I know Joe and I talked briefly yesterday about doing a regular podcast together. So, Ben, you're more than welcome to join those in the future. We'll let you know when those are going to be. So today is going to be all about introducing characters. I looked online for, you know, and of course our Dungeon Master book. There's all kinds of different tips and tricks all over the place. But I wanted to get different points of view, and I wanted to get y'all's point of view as well. To the screen to my left, or over here, is Joe. Joe, you want to tell people who you are and your experience with RPGs?
I'm Joe. I'm from the Baitarians. We literally just started up our little group recently. However, we've been doing a project called the Animite Tales, a tabletop RPG, about 2 years ago. We've been doing this for about 2 years now. I'm a games developer for video games, but I recently just started thinking I'll do that alongside with tabletops. Very difficult, very stressful. And yeah, so it's been good. So we now have a Patreon, Twitter account, and a Facebook page. So see us at the Baitarians. And my current RPG knowledge is mostly based on tabletop RPGs. Is mostly based on the one that we've been creating for the last 2 years. All of the different scenarios. Watching a couple of my friends play D&D, and watching a lot of D&D videos, including these two, both of them, as well as Team 4-Star. I love every one of you guys' videos. They are fantastic. And my brother actually got me into Ben's videos. And the second that Des and I started talking, and she said, "Oh yeah, no, we do Twitch." I'm like, I have to watch that. So yeah, that's mostly my experience.
Excellent, thank you, Joe. And Ben, I'd be surprised if none of our viewers know who you are.
My name's Ben. I'm Puffin Forest. I have a YouTube channel called Puffin Forest, and I make animated videos on tabletop RPG, some of the stories that happen in our games, and that's me.
Cool. What kind of RPGs have you played in the past?
What kind of RPGs? I've played a bunch. Well, most of the ones that I'm a player in are like D&D. I've played Dresden Files, Fate. I've played Pokemon RPG. I've played a lot of Star Wars. And then stuff that I ran, I did Call of Cthulhu, I did D&D, I did, and then I tried a bunch of like one-shots of different stuff, like Mutants and Masterminds, and Legend of the Five Rings, Mage, stuff like that, yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you both. And yeah, I'm Des. I'm one of the co-creators along with my other pals that kind of go on our Twitch channel. It's not mine, it's ours. But yeah, I'm one of the main DMs with Jerry, who's another one of our DMs, and I've been playing RPG video games for many years, but RPG tabletop, I'm the newbie here. I've only been playing since like August, and that was with GURPS RPG, and then I got into D&D, and then Justin, our tech guru, introduced Fate to me, and my selection of books there. As I started get slowly into D&D, my book collection got bigger, and my dice collection. I didn't know dice was a thing. So there's so many beautiful dice out there.
Oh, you're one of those type of people. You got the horde, and you're sleeping on them at night.
This is my dice holder. It's not dice in there because I play with them all the time.
I'm going to get my dice holder to show the difference, because mine's over here. Hang on a sec.
And I love how mine's like within reach. It's like I need them. Like, this is my work in school.
I have an emergency dice set of mini dice. These dice are, I don't know if it shows up, but the dice are actually smaller than normal.
Oh wow! Do you like keep them in your pockets just in case somebody comes up and you're on the street?
Size, and then also an emergency smaller size.
So for those of you,
that's better.
so for those of you listening, if you see Ben on the street, Make sure you have a character ready.
Yeah, mine is just a little bag, a Ziploc bag here, a little full of 2 different sets of dice. One I got from Norwich Comic Con, not Norwich Comic Con, London Comic Con, and a bunch of like coins. Yeah.
Oh,
England.
I have some British. What is this? This is when when we had our layover in Heathrow. I have £2. I have £2. That's all I have. Oh, it's very shiny.
It is very.
This is the Queen.
Oh wow, those are old £1 coins.
Oh, these are old?
Yeah, we actually have new ones that have little silver rings inside of them.
Oh, cool. I'm fascinated by them. So they're like my little trophies of London over here.
I've got a couple from a couple of like you guys call them quarters, like 25 cents.
Yep.
I have one of those and $1 bill because I find your currency very fascinating, and therefore I kept that.
That was one of the things we talked about when we were introducing our characters, or when we were introducing players as strangers. You guys would convert from pounds to dollars on your RPG, and you would explain, well, this is kind of equivalent of dollars, and this is kind of equivalent of a pence, cents. It's just like going back and forth, and I'm like, oh, thank you for like trying to speak my language over here.
Well, it was mostly because like we were like, yeah, no, we'll talk about this kind of currency, and then we were thinking, actually, no, that's silly. After we did that session, my brother, who actually came up with that form of the currency, they're called MGs. It's based off of the country called Linear. They go E's, M's, and G's, and I think it's like E's are basically the pennies or the copper pieces. The silver pieces are the M's, and then the G's are basically like gold. And only after that a particular encounter, after the actual session, he said, we could have just said copper, silver, and gold. And I just went, oh my gosh, why didn't we do that?
Yeah.
Because it's your game and you can do whatever you want with it. That's why.
No, I think the explainer, like we could, said, oh yeah, do it dollars or cents or pounds, and it was the worst because we said, oh yeah, we could have just said copper, silver, and gold.
And that's, and introducing all those kind of things as an aspect as a DM, especially when you're writing your own story. I mean, that's going to be complicated if you want to write your own like type of currency, type of lands, type of stuff like that. And I'm going to go ahead and start diving into our topic today, which is introducing characters. I know we were talking a little bit about time zones and whatnot, gathering players who, strangers and whatnot. One of the questions I had for both of y'all was what's the best way, do you think, for you to gather players? I know for me, I'm going to have a different perspective because mine's online. So, gathering my players is just basically like a text message like, hey, are you guys free tonight? You got your cameras set? All right, cool, let's just do this. Or, now with our D12, D20 group, we actually have like a calendar. So people can see and, people can check in with me. It's like, oh, I'm not available. Yeah, I'm available. And yeah, I do have to ask people, hey, are you available tonight? Are you available in like an hour? And sometimes with me, it's, with new characters, like, okay, you want to play this game? Well, then you'll just be introduced in the next session. But with you two, how do you gather people, like strangers or friends? How does that, or what's the best way you find? If there is a best way.
so do you want to start, or should I take it?
I definitely think you should start because I don't think I have a good answer for this one.
Yeah, I'll give you some time to think. So basically for me, one of the things is that there's different ways. Like if I have a home game, it's usually from friend of a friend's, because it's like, oh, I invite some friends of mine or people I know from other games or stuff like that to a group, and then we're in a group, and then they go to work, they talk to people, they know someone else, and then they'll say, oh my god, at this game, dude, this thing happened. They tell the story or something. Like, wow, that's really cool. And so a lot of times the way that people get added to my home games is from friend of a friend's or like relatives of friends and stuff like that. But there's also another thing is that I do Adventurers League, where I go to a game store on a particular day of the week, and then I set up a table, and then whoever shows up at that time can sit down at the table, and there's like 7 slots, and it's almost always full. There have been a few rare times where I'll have less than 7, where I'll have like 5, like that's considered a small table is 5. But all the other times it's average of 7, and that's a lot, mostly for home games. But anyway, the thing is that then you can meet people through there, and talk to them, and then the people who you have a click with or you have a connection with, then you can set up like, hey, I have a home game too, because most people who go to Adventurers League also have games that they run at home, and so you can talk to them and kind of network into other people's games.
So networking mainly.
Yeah.
Networking is big.
I definitely agree with that. For one thing, networking, if it weren't for me joining on a couple of the different servers on Facebook, I wouldn't have actually met Des, and I wouldn't have met, well, funny enough, if it weren't for my brother fishing around on a couple of the different communities on Discord, we wouldn't have found one of our other players, Dune. And as for me, it was actually networking with a bunch of my other geeky friends at university. I did video games development in uni, and one of the biggest things that we were doing is like, hey guys, you were all like a really big fans of Marvel and DC, and they're like, yeah, what, why? And I was like, well, so D&D's a thing. I was thinking of making this game, and that immediate thing, they were just like, okay, what sort of classes are there? And I was like, oh no, it's just like powers and stuff. And I hadn't really thought a lot of the idea through. And they said, yeah, cool. We'll all sit down and we'll like get this wiki list of powers. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I'll think of the mechanics as we go along. And that moment where all 4 of them sat down and made their characters. We had our own dice system for the stats. And they got their powers, and I made up how the mechanics would work. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, that small, super nerdy thing that we did turned into what rolled and evolved into now what the larger community that we're trying to push now for Animite Tales is. And those guys are still. I barely speak to them now, but those guys are the founding members, and their characters will forever be as NPCs as some characters that you'll actually see, and some of them are very very different, but they're all brilliant people to me because they helped me build the foundations for this project, and the way that I contact a lot of my people is via, I'm just now trying to get it up, Discord. So we actually have something here on. I'm trying to find a normal Discord part because it's actually here. So we actually have. Okay, here we go. So we have
Discord. That's right. Discord is really helpful.
Yes, it is. Just have the. Just there. We have like the Animite Tales thing just up here and a bunch of other ones. But we actually have a test server. If you go on our Patreon, you'll be able to have a look at that. And also, if you're one of the members on Patreon, then you'll actually be able to either hear some of our sessions on Monday. For us, it's Monday afternoons. For anyone in America, it would be morning. Morning or early afternoon.
Yeah, it would be. I know we start at 12 in Texas or I start at 12.
Yeah. For us, it's like 6.
Those time zones, they'll get us every time.
If you're in England, then yeah, welcome to 6 o'clock. And if you're not, oh boy. But no, most of the form of how we contacted each other was through mostly just texting. Hey, you guys free? Hey, is anyone free? And it's been difficult. We're now doing sessions. As of this Friday, we'll be doing sessions actually on a table, and we haven't done on a table yet. So since the very beginning, so everyone who is invited to the event, which is anyone who can actually get to the event.
I'm sorry, I won't be able to be there.
Darn. No, but anyone who's actually able to come is definitely looking forward to it, and as am I, as I will be the GM for this, but I'm really hoping that eventually I'll be able to maybe get a tester who is comfortable enough to actually do some DMing.
Well, cool. And your brother's a very good DM as well, or narrator. Yes. In that way. And he did a great job setting us up, getting all the story all together and explaining the rules and whatnot. one of the things that I didn't do well as a player was when he said, hey, you know, we're going to start our game. Let's go ahead and introduce our character. You're already laughing because I mentioned it yesterday. So yes. It's like, we're going to introduce our character. Who wants to go first? And as a player, I was super excited, very excited. I was like, oh, I have her backstory. I even know where college she went from. I knew where city she went from and her birth date and all that. And when I said, I'll go first. And as a player, I was excited about all this information of being proud of Micah, the character. And so I was like, she's a geologist and she's from this town and all this stuff. And then it was like 5 minutes later, it's like silence from y'all. And then the next person's like, okay, well, my character's tall. He has this color hair. And I realized, like, oh my God, I didn't introduce my character. I gave away everything. We're introducing the visual characters.
Story, yeah.
So, you know, as a GM, as both of y'all are GMs, what's the best way to kind of give that kind of, hey, you know, to prepare your person, like, you have any rules? Like, you know, let us know your hair color, clothes, or do they have any limbs, tattoos? Like, do you give anybody rules beforehand?
I mean, personally, I'll go quickly because mine is super quick. Personally, I usually just say, tell us what we should be able to see of your character if we are currently able to see your character. And that's it. Like, I don't say
always
anything.
Invisible.
Yeah, if it's like that, fine. But at least tell us first. You can't tell us them's the rules.
Whenever I lose invisibility, I just run out of the room and refresh it and come back in.
Just have a towel over you. No.
But that's visuals. You're seeing the towel then.
Darn.
Do you have to describe the towel then?
It's lime and tattered.
Yeah, it's I think for me, so I mean, it's kind of up to the player. Like, sometimes they'll just say, okay, just like when you start, like, visually, what do you see? And for sometimes it's just a short one sentence, like, my guy, he's an old military guy and he looks like he's in his 50s or something like that. And then sometimes you give additional details, and it's because they can't see that he's, like, you can't see that someone's in their late 60s, but like, you can say, I'm in my late 60s, and then people can put together, like, oh, he probably has great hair, you know, maybe it's long, maybe it's short, something like that, or he kind of has age and stuff like that. And so just kind of a general idea of what to look. Some people are way more brief than others. Other people have, like, ooh, I have this, and I got a book on my side, and this, and this, and this, and all this detail. Other times it's just a general sentence, and then people kind of fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to, you know, so you mentioned that, you know, when people are introducing their characters and, you know, it could be a quick sentence of what they look like. What about people that know each other, the characters that know each other? It's like, do you have any limits? For example, like, do you have any limits on what you want them to say about their story? And in preparing the story, are you forced to give a little bit of the story and a little bit more of the lore of your campaign to them, to people that know each other, the characters that know each other?
Is this for, like, veteran players who are just now for the first time meeting newer players, or, you know, vice versa? Like, you guys have been for a long time.
I think she was talking more like veteran characters or something. Maybe it's like, oh, all the players are meeting, like, okay, even if they're veteran players, but like the characters, how much information do you give or something?
Right, yeah.
And also, like, you know, if there are two players that know each other, let's say, you know, you have a husband and a wife, and they want to play D&D, but one of them's not comfortable or not familiar with it, so they say, well, we'll just start as a couple in the game. Like, how do we do that? And then you have to revert back to the story. It's like, okay, well, how would they meet? Where would they meet? All that kind of stuff, without giving away so much of the lore, and, you know, so that it's more entertaining for them.
I've actually no, go on.
Usually the players come to me with that stuff, where it's like, oh, we want to know each other, and then it's like, we want to keep this a secret from the other players, and they give me that information. I assume that any of the information on the table, everyone has access to, unless a player declares, this is a secret, I don't want the other people to know. Like, if you go to a particular college, like, oh yeah, you're from this college, like, I'm gonna say it out loud or something like that, because the problem is that I'm talking to a player, And while the other characters may not know that, that's just one of the issues where you got a player at the table. He's like, "Oh, did I go to this college?" And he's thinking to himself, but he's talking to me, and so the other players might figure it out, even though the characters don't know. And that's the problem with what we do. But the only thing is that if a player comes to me and says, "I want this to be a secret. I don't want the other people to know," then I am going to be making sure to keep that under wraps.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I fully agree with that. To be honest, if someone has said to me, "Oh, I look like this," and I go, "Okay, so we're gonna tell everyone that," then, but if someone has actually said, "Actually, could I have this, but like not tell anyone?" Then obviously, as Ben's just said, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. If it has been stated and it's okay with the DM, and it's not like something that is just like, yeah, by the way, can I actually have it that like my backstory is that I'm actually like a level 10 dude, but I've got amnesia, and then like if someone bashes my head, I suddenly unlock that power. I'm like, no, no. But if you have maybe like a family that has incredible gains, but you don't know about it, then yeah, because technically that's not something that would immediately like be a thing, because getting knocked on the back of the head could happen like that, and then everyone's like, hang on a second, why did he just jump 10 levels?
Well,
that's a good point.
So there was another funny thing as far as like secrets is like, keeping a secret that's going to do like a betrayal later on or something. And
we've had that.
Always a problem for me. I do know I have had
characters betraying other characters. What are you talking about? That never happened.
God, there was one time the group had there was a demon that had betrayed them, and then a bunch of people were under alter self, and then they had some doppelgangers, and they did not trust anyone, and some of the players wanted to come in as a demon that was altered self, and I'm like, look, they're gonna try and figure you out, and if they discover that you're working for this demon that just tried to kill them all, they're not gonna want to work with you,
Yeah.
So there sometimes you get into conflicts with that, and making sure that everyone can work together. And it has to be that if you have a secret, like if the secret gets revealed, your character can still be in the game. Because sometimes what happens is they'll have the secret and it's like, oh, if this gets uncovered, then my character gets kicked out of the storyline. And I'm like, look, that's going to last maybe a session or two. Like, you gotta, like, there's a chance you might get revealed and you're just gone. And that's, like, are you going to be okay with that? And usually I feel like they aren't. And so that's part of the reason why I'm a little bit more hesitant about that kind of stuff.
We've had something similar to the system that you were talking about earlier, where it was like not only betrayal, but we've also had it where someone's like, yeah, we wanted to be like either a couple, or we wanted to have some like previous backstory. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, what is it? And we've had a couple of different ones. We've had people being siblings. We've had people know each other as they've been like work partners for the last however many days, weeks, years. I mean, literally just recently, we've had it that my character in my brother's campaign is actually good friends with this other dude who is actually like a husk, which is basically a mutated creature. And funnily enough, I've never met this guy. I've only spoken to him a few times, but we have done fairly well in the terms of teamwork, because as role playing, Simon Lime is friends with this hulking beast of a man, and it worked well. But honestly, that it's just entirely dependent. And we did have to specify that at the beginning of the game. We had to say like, okay, who knows each other, who doesn't know each other, it's up to you. And that was the DM's choice to ask us that. It was our choice to then go, I don't think I know anyone. But at one point I go, I guess if anyone else is up for teamwork, then I don't mind knowing someone else prior. And that's when he then stepped in and said, yeah, my guy's big and bulky and he's super strong, but he has not a lot of intelligence and he's quite easily trusting. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that sounds perfect, because my dude's quite naive, but he's a preacher. So therefore, these two would actually go really well together, because he's not very strong physically, but he's got this big old pal
that breaks signs.
Yes, and breaks signs. No hard feelings.
I will say that when I introduce new players to D&D, I kind of lean towards you guys already kind of know each other and you've been on like a mission or something. And the reason why is just because sometimes people find it awkward to go through that whole meeting up phase. And the meeting up phase, what happens is there's an expectation that you're going to talk to each other, you're going to realize each other's strengths and weaknesses, you're going to make a deal, and you're all going to decide to work together at the end. And so new players, they don't like that first meeting comes with all this baggage that they have to role play through. Like, okay, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And the new players don't necessarily know that. They're like, what are we doing here? What are we trying to do? And so sometimes I just like, okay, I'm just gonna introduce you guys to how the game works, and this is how it's played, and this is where we're going. And then later on, maybe we'll do that kind of a baggage thing later on.
There is one that is the easiest one. I think your one is definitely close, but the easiest one is Prison Break. If all of you are in the same cell, or at least in the same prison, and you're like, all 5 of us have unique abilities and skills that all of us need to use together to break out. And at that point, when they've done that, they've overcome that, and they're like, yeah, we're Prison Break buddies. And actually, we could go on lots of adventures together, and yeah, we'll be unstoppable. Even the prisons couldn't defeat us. And that's kind of like the best stride, because it puts you in that controlled environment, and it's like, yeah, by the way, you are now imprisoned in this area. All 5 of you don't really know each other, or you do, depending on whether or not you've heard information about each other. But either way, you guys are all here, and now you have to try and use each other's skills to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's the easiest one for storytelling in the terms of getting a group together. But in the terms of like, you guys are heroes or adventurers, definitely Ben's one, because yeah, it's already preordained that you guys have done some stuff together.
Have either of you, when you're introducing these characters, when you're, letting the story progress, in the beginning, have you ever had a person that really was confused about how, I'm trying to think of the best way confused on how to express their character? I guess what I asked y'all yesterday, like, helping somebody say what their character is without doing it for them. Because you'll have somebody maybe that says a short intro is like, oh, he's a paladin and his name is Flopsy. Or, oh, she's a mysterious stranger in the corner. And they just don't say anything after that. It's like, how do you kind of like, not push players, but how do you kind of help them without completely doing all the work for them?
Oof.
That's a difficult question.
I was just going to say, I've had quite a few issues with that myself, with a few players. We had one, actually, I explained to you guys yesterday. There was a character in one of the sessions that we had who was just literally a warrior, and they were like, yeah, my parents were killed, but it wasn't like a vengeful killing. They just died in a car accident or something. I was like, oh, okay. And now I am being trained by martial artist, and that's where my story begins. Okay. What kind of person are they? What do they talk about? What do they do? They're just a fighter. Okay. So it can be difficult if a person's not that creative, but they still love playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes one of those things that, okay, I guess you'll learn as you play on. But if they get stagnant and they don't really know what to do, sometimes it can be a bit of a problem. And I think the best thing that I have figured out for that is, if this is to talking to those people who are shy, who don't really know how their character should or would react in this scenario. Honestly, either flip a coin or roll a d20 or d10 or any dice that has an easily splittable number, and just say the lower half is one decision and the higher half is one decision. And yeah, it's just do that. Like, if the character does nothing, or if the character does something erratic or something peaceful, it's better than just that, and then other people thinking that your character has no charm to them. Like, even if it's something that you wouldn't want your character to do, just do it and roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can easily take that back. Like, say, for instance, pulling out a sword and putting it against the throat of the bar bench because they're like, no, I want free drinks. That's easily able to just put back, like, no, I'm sorry, I get a bit angry, rather than just going, I'm not going to do anything. And that's kind of irreversible. All those hours of just not talking or not doing anything, and people are going like, oh no, what about this character? Yeah, what about this character? Like, just leave Namo to the wind.
Ben, have you ever had to kind of push players or do a lot for them to kind of get them to describe their character?
So for me, the way that I handle that is sometimes a player will just say, "Okay, what's your character doing?" It's like, "Oh, I'm sitting in the corner," and that's kind of that's sometimes they don't even describe it, and I start throwing out suggestions like the waitress comes over and asks you if you want anything. What do you say to her? And then the way that they say it, like, if are they gruff, are they not? And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll have other things interact with them, and then we'll figure out the personality from their interactions with other things. Like, are people eyeing you in the corner? Are people creeped out? Are you like the life of the party? Or if a character comes up to you, do you just brush them off? Like, no, you can't talk to me or something? Or are they inviting them to their table? If someone tries to start a fight, are they going to apologetically kind of back down, or are they going to be like, no, it wasn't me? For me personally, also in terms of like the backstory and stuff, I think the most important thing to role play a character is a personality, like what kind of a person that they are. And I feel like the purpose of the backstory is to figure out their personality. Like, I mean, it's other details and stuff like that, but because you could have other threads that you bring in, but you could have just a personality, like he's wiry and I do explosives, and you have different things in your pocket and stuff. And so you have that personality that you can use, and you may not know exactly where they came from or how much money they have or stuff like that. But as long as you have a personality, like that's something to kind of work off of people. And then in addition, sometimes later on in the storyline, when you have that personality, we can start working on the backstory and figuring out other things that happened in your past that we can work into the main narrative.
That's an excellent point of view. I never thought about that. Me taking down notes. I'm going to watch this again and be like, what did he say? So when it comes to time, everybody has an expectation. Players for it's like I like D&D, but I only got like 3 hours. And especially when we do things online, it's like, okay, we're from 7 to 10. We got to get it moving. And certain points is like, as a DM, do you step in with character introductions if it takes too long for one shots? I know for our Lord of the Rings ones that we did with Ben, everybody knew who Sauron was. Everybody knew who Saruman was. We didn't need to explain it. So we just said, all right, and in this puff of smoke came the Balrog. Everybody knows what that is. So in introducing those characters, it was like seconds. And that was for a one shot. But for longer campaigns, how much time, like, do you cut them off, or do you say, okay, that's too much? It's like you're describing how many pimples on their face they have. It's like we don't need to know that information. Like, as a DM, do you ever step in? Is it taking too long? Or, before the session, like, hey, do you give them a time limit at all? For one shots or campaigns.
I feel like I keep jumping in. Okay.
Go for it.
Sorry. So, for me, actually, a lot of my players don't introduce or don't give as much detail, or they're a little bit. I do notice that a lot of the players start kind of whittling down the details that they give. Part of it is because if you have like a long-running campaign and these are new characters and like people go into a lot of detail and stuff, but I'll give you in Adventures League, people don't even introduce their characters. They will. We're at a group, and what'll happen is it'll be like, okay, I come over to you and I say, hey, let's go, and people have no idea what they look like or what their names are, and we still kind of have a narrative and stuff, but you'll get into issues where it's like, oh, I'm gonna pick you up and throw you. It's like, wait a second, you were a bugbear, or you were this kind of a person, or you're a Goliath. So there's some prizes, but it's because you run with 7 players, and the next week it's a completely different 7 players, and it's a completely different 7 players. So what'll happen is you'll be running with like 80 different players in a few months or something, and it's very difficult to keep track of the kind of characters and stuff that everyone has. And so, but sometimes people have a really strong personality that you remember that goes along with it. Like if they're a tiefling, like there's one of the memorable characters was there was this creepy tiefling. He's like, oh yes, they'll all be my friends. I'll know them. And I remember that. That's a very strong narrative that they have with that. But anyway, that's AL. That's Adventures League. So let's go over to home. Is that most of the time people just introduce a little bit, they give a few details, and then we just kind of move on. I think it just has to do with the fact that most of the players that I work with, that has not been a big issue, that they'll go into like, oh yeah, it's half an hour of introducing characters. Like I've never had, or I think maybe a while ago, like a few years ago, we might have had that as a problem, but in a campaign, like at the start. But that's like, I really don't have that as a problem right now.
That's good.
Yeah, no, actually, that pretty much tops everything that I was going to say. I was just going to say, on the first year of me doing this, biggest problem was time consumption, and oh boy, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know about what happens if some of the either the players or even the DM just goes, yeah, we can keep going. We've just got one more fight to go, and you're just spending an extra hour, 2, maybe 3 or 4 on top of the original 3 hours that you were supposed to do, and then you just go, I was supposed to go home at 4, it's now 9.
Yeah.
I'd say character introduction is important, but only the bare minimum necessary factors. Like, yeah, fair enough. Like, I think it is funny if someone just goes, yeah, I'm draped in cloaks, nobody needs to know who I am right now, or yeah, I'm just, my character's wearing this. If someone goes, what race are you? They go either non-depictable, like, so, oh, okay, so it must be easily discernible, like human or elf, but I just can't see the ears or something. Or, oh, it's obvious you're a gnome or a halfling. In Animite Tales, it's pretty much the same. There are 4 different types of species, and 2 of them look human, the other 2 do not. So therefore, if it's like the person walks up and is like, oh, what kind of species is this guy? I just go, cyborg, or, oh, human, or, oh, husk. And it's just like, okay, fair enough. I know that this person does not look human, or I know that they look human. And so therefore, that's it. If someone has something very obvious about them, or not so obvious, then a person can roll insight or perception, and therefore that's what gets the game rolling, quite literally.
No pun intended. A little
bit. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, I would have to recommend like doing that, just saying like, okay, everyone's in the bar, you're in particular locations. If you know each other, then that's all great. If you don't, you're all in different particular areas, or even like not a bar. It doesn't have to be a bar. It never has to be a tavern. Don't believe that, people. It doesn't have to be.
And that's you actually bring up my next point very well, is cues. How are you going to give cues to people to introduce each other? One of the first campaigns I did in D&D was for Pandemonic, who's now our tech guru, Justin. I really enjoyed his introductions for people. He would, say, okay, he would describe the location, like this is your surroundings, and then he would describe the person, and what they look like. And for me, since I was very, very new, like everybody was picking up like, oh, okay, I'm about to talk about my character. I was about to talk about my character, and they picked that up no problem. I was very new, so I was very confused. He said, oh, okay, now you look at the back of the cart, and there's a halfling there with a lute, and I'm just sitting there like, that's me. What the heck do I say? And so as a new player, I'm like, she's playing a little tune and kicking her feet. And he's like, okay. It's like he's trying to like he's not trying to do that for me, but as a new player, I was terrified. I didn't know what to say. So, do you give cues like that to kind of, and what do you do for new players that don't know how to take cues like me?
I do, but my cues are more forward. As someone who's had to do that in when I was doing that in college for acting, it was like, oh, and the cue is this line. However, obviously with improvisation, there is no line before yours, and so you have to be very specific and very strict as to how you state someone else's like arrival. Like for me, it was fairly easy with the first ever crew, because it was just literally we were all at the table, so I could just look at them and go, and so we come to Kane, and so we come to Alex, and so we come to and that was easy. Over Discord, online, the best thing is to describe the character, or even just say who would like to go first. My brother, who's a brilliant narrator, honestly. He, I'm not biased. No, he knows.
Well, I am. He is a great narrator.
He knows I'd tell him if he's terrible. But he actually did it in a different way. He actually told everyone to, at the beginning, roll a d20. Just like how you would do initiative, but instead no one had any stat bonuses, no one anything. It was just literally just roll a d20. Whoever has highest goes first, and we'll go from there in the terms of whose story we carry on if you guys are separate, if you guys are all together. It's just who talks or who does something first. And I think suss the situation out as a DM, think about that, and use that honestly, because even if like your characters are not very not very obvious, and your players are not very creative, there will still come a moment where you just go, yeah, no, actually, yeah, it's okay. So it's my turn, so I have to do something. I drink heavily, and it's just ultimately it's down to the players at that point, and I think it's a way better thing, because like one of the things that my cousin's always saying is that like it's always the DM whose rules it is, but the dice are the gods that he rolls.
That's true, yeah, and going back to what your brother does for a narrator, I actually never seen that before, is who's going to start talking at the beginning of all of our sessions. He says, all right, everybody roll initiative. And at first, when I first was starting to play with y'all, I thought we were in combat. I was like, oh crap, what am I going to do? What is my superpower? But he's like, okay, Micah, it's your turn. What are you doing? I'm like, eating an ostrich's heart. I don't... He's like, all right, nice. And then he goes to the next person. I'm like, and then I started figuring out that's what he's doing. He's making sure everybody gets a turn to talk at the very beginning. I thought that was brilliant. I'd never seen that before. How about you, Ben?
I will say that I do that as well, where I do the initial, like, okay, we'll resolve everyone by the highest roll to lowest roll. Mm-hmm. And I also do this thing called chance rolling, where it's like sometimes they'll ask, like, oh, is there a vase by my head? And I'll roll a d20. If it's high, they get there's a vase by their head. If it's low, there's no vase or something. And sometimes I'll even roll for character personality, where they'll be talking to a halfling, like, does this guy want to help us out? And it's like, I'm high, he's a good guy and really cares about you. Low, he's a jerk and he's just out for his own, or something like that. And some of the players were like really confused, because I'd be sitting there rolling dice, like, does he want to help you? And then he rolls. It's like they thought I was making deception rolls.
I think I now know where he got it from. Now I'm gonna have some words with him later. I now know where you got that initiative thing from.
But there is another thing. Sorry, the original question was on cues.
Cues, yes. Yeah. Do you give cues?
So my point is with cues is that. I just flat out tell, like, I am really direct when I'm talking to the players about, do you guys want to do this? Do you guys want to do this? Or I'll even say, like, the narrative is splitting right now. You have this as a goal right now, but you could also do this one. And the reason why I'm really, like, blunt is because I have seen so many arguments at the table, and stupid debates. The thing is, and this is totally personal, is that I have seen so many arguments break out from misunderstandings, where it's like a character sitting out for like 2-3 hours, 4 hours, does nothing over the session, and it's like, I gave you a cue at the beginning that you were supposed to introduce your character, and since you missed the cue, you spent the entire session not doing anything or something. Or like, I kept cueing it that, and then, or sometimes it's like, I'll give a player a cue, or sometimes I've seen where the GM gives the player a cue and the player argues the cue with their own cue, but the GM doesn't pick up that they're arguing their cue with their cue. Like, for example, they're having this subtle argument back and forth where, like, the GM is saying, oh, maybe your dad is sending you a message. And it's like the player's saying, like, huh, that's really weird. My dad's dead, or something like that. Or like they're trying to send him a cue to get him into the storyline.
I know what you mean, like the opposite of the yes and scenarios, like yes and no, just no, but.
Yeah, because what the player's trying to do is, like, the player has a particular way that they want to get cued in, and then they're trying to cue the GM to give them another kind of a cue, but they don't, and they're having this argument. It's the dumbest thing. It's the dumbest thing. If they just talk for like 10 seconds, and and this is one of the reasons why I always have a problem with, like, sometimes people, they want the immersion and they want to be in story and they don't want to have to be having this metagame conversation, but I'm like, look, just ask them, okay? Just make character for like 10, just one line.
That's an excellent point. Again, as a new DM player, I'd never thought of that. Figured I'd start doing that.
And once again, whole thing of like a player will want this thing to happen in the storyline, but they don't want to say it. They can't just say it to the GM, and then because of that, they have this whole storyline that gets missed because of a little misunderstanding. And I'm like, look, I just want to have that metagame talk. I think it's perfectly fine.
I do that, but I've actually gotten that wrong before. So someone came to me 10 minutes before the session and say, "Hey, so this is what my character is. This is what they are." At one point, one of the players actually told me that their character was like, I know I'm going to get it wrong. Either way, they told me their character's gender, and they were like, "However, it's not super obvious." And I was like, "Okay." And then I completely messed it up, and they corrected me. I was like, yeah, it's that. And I was like, and then at the end of the session, I had to apologize. They weren't upset with me, but it was just that thing. I was like, I'm really sorry. I completely forgot because about 3 other people asked me some other stuff, and literally, you wanted me to do this, you wanted me to do that, and the gender of the character completely gone over my head, and everything else I had to store up. To be fair, though, I messed up on everyone else's one because it was like, yeah, and your dad's like a great crime lord, and he has large amounts of money. No, he's a hero, and he actually like has like a large tailoring shop, and he's like one of the biggest heroes in the center. And you and I, you cleared this with me. You and I said it. Yes, that's what I meant. I was thinking about someone else.
There was one time I remember one of the players was like going to introduce this character, and they were kind of like a trickster, like a little bit of a funny guy, kind of trickster sort of a thing, character and I was going to have this joke thing of like they open up and they find him in the kitchen kind of rooting around through the food or something because they were part animal or something like that. And once they found that out, they just wanted him like, no, you can't be part of the group, and kicked him out like the second he got introduced. Like, and I was like, well, crap.
That's a really good point. Sorry, go ahead.
He had a completely different thing of he was going to be in trouble and the players were going to save him. And I said, like, well, what about this? And he's like, okay, I guess. And then and so I felt bad because it basically ruined the character for him because it soured the initial meeting. And so they didn't want to talk to this guy. And so it sucked.
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. It's like, how, as a DM or a GM, how do you make sure your characters go on an adventure together? Like, what is the purpose? Like, if you have a rogue or a loner, and we talked about a little bit of this yesterday, it's like, if you have a loner character, it's like, why in the world would they, go on this days or years mission with these other people? Or it's like, yeah, going back to the tavern, the default, the basic, it's like you're at a tavern, and like a halfling walks. I'm still on Lord of the Rings. You have a halfling come in and says, "Oh, there's an orc outside killing puppies." It's like, yeah, everybody would want to save the puppies, so they go outside. But why, after they saved them, why would they want to stay together? Like, what connection?
Hang out,
yeah,
go for drinks together.
Yeah, it's
like your orc slaying, boy. Come with me. Let's have a drink. I'm not a boy. I'm a halfling. You're funny, boy.
Like, one of the things that I did for Puzzle Traveler is, we had different characters. I had like 9 players, and I had to figure out, it's like, why in the world were these people? And they're very different. It's like you had a Dragonborn that was very serious and honorable, and then you had a Bard who was just like totally in it for himself. It's like, whatever. It's like, why in the world these people be together? And so I developed a character that could visit people in their dreams, and so I had this one main character connecting all of them. And so the Bard came down after, waking up from the strange dream, and then he sees that guy that was in his dream talking to the Dragonborn. And what he said in the Bard's dream was like, "Come find me. You need to come find me. I need your help." And so the Bard sees him. He's like, "Oh, you're from my dream." And then that's like the connection that I made, as well as like, oh, we have this monk who's very, she doesn't know anybody. She's from the monastery. She's been around old people for her whole life, so she's just kind of wandering around. It's like, so I had that one main character leave the Bard and the Dragonborn and go outside, go find her, and he starts talking to her. He's like, I'd like you. I think you have skills that could be helpful. My friends are in there. I think you should speak to them. And then that kind of, so I had like one main character popping around to these individual character or players, and that was the connection I made. But do y'all have any examples of people that, like Ben, what you just said is like, why would they be Why would they start a story and continue it?
For me, as far as character motivation, sometimes a lot of times they put that requirement onto the players. I'm like, okay, this is going to be the storyline. You know, the mission is this. Why are your characters involved with this group and going on this thing? And if a player is like, oh, well, I wouldn't, my character wouldn't, it's like, I mean, do you want to change characters or do you want to like their motivation or something like? And so to some extent, it's kind of the player require. I think that the GM does have a requirement of not making the mission so specific that it's like, look, no one would go on this mission. You know, you're having a mission about what, destroying the world and offering ourselves up as sacrifices. Like, I don't want to do that. But as long as it's like there's some kind of a moral motivation or a monetary motivation. Those are the two big ones: monetary motivation, moral motivation. Then hopefully the characters can pick one or the other. But the one requirement I do have is so there's a few things. One is that you can't put requirements on the other players. Like, you can't be like, I'm going to be a nobility. Like, all of you have to address me a certain way and then start doing favors for me, or else I wouldn't be in the group. Like, you can't put requirements onto the other players. You know, or
as a player yourself.
Yeah, as a player yourself. And sometimes they'll say like, oh, you know, why aren't you guys more accepting of my character? And it's like, you are putting requirements on everyone.
Yeah.
You know, this is like, you are bringing, like, if the thing is that you don't want other people putting requirements on your character, don't do it to other people, you know. And part of, you know, you got to give people freedom, but part of freedom means not, you know, imposing your will onto the other characters and requiring what they do. There's another thing, which is that sometimes a player will come with a storyline embedded in them, where they'll come with a mission where it's like, I'm trying to reclaim my kingdom. You know, that's my character's motivation. And like, once again, that you got to work it with everyone else. Like, they're going to go off to this temple. Like, why are you going to this temple? And the problem is that if you come with a mission and you want that mission to be done, you take on the role of the GM. You are trying to get the other players involved. And guess what? As a GM, sometimes they don't accept your mission, you know, or something, or sometimes they don't like it. And so, like, let's say you're like, oh, I'm Aragorn, I'm trying to reclaim my kingdom. It's, you gotta pretend like you're an NPC coming to them with a mission, and guess what? Like, sometimes they say no, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest example that I could probably have is one particular one that I remember, and then also the one that we're currently doing now, is that the first one was basically, there was 3 of them at the beginning, and then there were 4. So it started off with a human who was the warrior, who had the really basic backstory of like, parents died, but not weren't killed, but it was an accident. One that was wanting to be a DJ, however, grew up around pirates. They didn't really know too much about their own heritage, and therefore they are currently trying to make their own way in this crazy world. And they've come to an island to try and teach them about music and hip hop. There's another a brave and, well, I say brave, a powerful and strong warrior who has strange heritage and lineage. However, he can't remember anything about his past. All he knows is that he has some strange abilities that grant him incredible strength, the likes of which no humans have ever seen before. And then finally, after they had like awakened a god from a temple, well, it was a ceremonial like area. A couple days later, they actually stumbled upon another man who was actually the son of a hero, and he said, "I've run away because I don't want to be, I don't want to be a villain. I just don't want to be forced into the hero lifestyle. He was like, at the time, he was like, I'm 17. I want to be able to make my own choices, Dad." And he was like, okay, cool, yeah, sure. And they all went on this adventure. They eventually found out the warrior, the amnesiac, he actually discovered that he had the ability to travel to other worlds. And so they used that to hop to different worlds and see wondrous like areas. And eventually they came back to the island and they went off to discover a different place. But during that time, he had actually gained his memories, and through those memories, he then used that to then create his own story. Now, this was preordained with me at the time, who was the DM, and himself. We was like, yeah, let's make the actual entire encounters and the story around your characters and your stories. And so he did his. They eventually beat them. They then went off to do we tried to do one for the others, and eventually as things go, eventually the group had to split up because just other requirements that they had, so as players, they all had to leave the sessions, and we weren't able to do it anymore, which was a shame. But that kind of thing, like, these guys had nothing to do with each other whatsoever. But they had all started getting on a new island, and it was like, oh yeah, it's a tourist location, and that was sort of like the thing. And then, oh, be careful, there are cults who are finding and looking for specific people of good breeding to take them to the sacrificial altar. And it turned out they weren't looking for like sacrifices. They were just looking for a specific kind of blood type to open a gate. And they didn't need a lot of blood either. They weren't evil people, which is really funny. And the god actually gave all of the party one item, as he said, I will grant you one wish. The warrior said, I want the best ice cream in the universe.
That sounds like a good goal.
And as the character was like, you sure? Like, I could give you anything. Yep, ice cream. Okay.
And it's just like a one sample. It's like one of those. It's just one little bite.
I actually had to make a MacGuffin. I made a MacGuffin for that ice cream, and I thought it would never happen. And the ice cream's MacGuffin was that if the character died, they would get one resurrection. But the resurrection was of that character's choice. And if not, they would forever be in the boundless void that was the dimension of the god. Because the god was a being of pure space. And he just went, and then because I was thinking, oh no, he's gonna want to stay in the void because he wants to basically be in his afterlife forever. And I just went, from the other side, you hear, help us, Anarche, we need your help. He said, can I roll to not be having my heartstrings tugged on?
Well, I had one of my, or the other GM, Jerry, he had a question for the both of you. What is your most memorable character intro? Either from from you being a player or you being a DM, either one.
I think I'll go first because I know Ben's going to be way better. So as a DM and as a DM and as seeing as player, we had one character who was a boss for me, and well, it was not a boss. He was a hero, like the number one hero of the place. His name was Viribus. And he showed up, he's like big, hulking man, sort of like a mix between All Might from My Hero Academia and Superman. Like, I kind of based the whole American way / just all good, purely unbreakable man, mostly just about super strength. And all of them met him and they were like, wow, you're really tall and you're really cool and everything like that. And all of a sudden they were like, one guy just goes, I don't believe that you're that strong. And he says, I challenge you for your place at number one. And he got annihilated. Because turns out I built it so that the top two heroes are actually bosses for villains. Because the top villains are bosses for the heroes, and the heroes are the bosses for villains. And that's kind of how it worked. And he got flattened in two roles only because that he was able to dodge the first one and the second one shot.
And how far into introducing those characters was that?
Second session. So that wasn't good. But my favorite character intro ever, in the terms of all of the players, has definitely been there have been some really good ones, but I'd have to say probably in my players, I've seen a bundle of people make all sorts of different characters based on all the system, and it's quite difficult to sort of like make a hero or a superhuman or any kind of character in that kind of world stand out, because I mean, the whole syndrome thing, if everyone's super, nobody is. And my favorite moment is when you actually get down to the grounded people, where it's like, characters like Des, your character Micah is just like kind of sitting there like, yeah, I just want to help people, and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, when she used her power for the first time, everyone was like, okay, she's actually quite strong. And the second time that she used her power, Simon actually nearly, well, if he hadn't if he didn't have the power that he had, he would have died. Let's not beat around the bush.
Yeah.
So my favorite character appearing ever has probably had to be my brother made a homebrew character called Jeff, the Lord of Jaffa, and he made a homebrew ability superpower, and he worked with it with me for about almost 2 weeks. So he perfected it so that it was balanced enough to actually be in a campaign, and he could basically. I don't know if you guys in America have heard about Jaffa cakes.
Going up.
What are you talking about? I don't know. Yeah. Oh yeah. This is one of the hidden ones. Sorry guys, like my friends that are watching right now. Yes, I did hide this from them because they ate the first package. Like with it, they're really good.
They are very good, and that's that. By the way, people who still don't understand that, it's like a small cake with chocolate, and underneath the chocolatey layer is like a small, like gooey gel made of orange, and it is delicious. It is beautiful, and it's great. But the character Jeff, he had the ability to just pop those in existence. And eventually he gained the ability to make each of the Jaffa Center have a different elemental effect. And that was kind of the cool thing that he could do. And he used that for like a silly character. And that my favorite moment is just like, you're all sitting there in a boat. It's rocking and turning. As you get there, we suddenly come to our two main protagonists of this tale. And I said, now describe yourselves. And the first one was just like, I'm mostly in mercenary stuff. I've got one sword on my side, single edge. It's a bit curved, and I've got mostly a cloak to sort of like shade away most of my bodily features. But I am about 5'5", and white male and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. And then I turned to my brother and I was like, okay, and now tell me yours. I am dressed brightly in orange, and I have nothing to hide. The clothing that I wear is mostly orange, but then I suddenly say to the rest of the crew, who wants a Jaffa cake? And suddenly spawn 20 of them in front of everyone, and they all have a feast of these delicious treats. And that was probably one of my favorite because it was so silly. And his power was, I have to admit, as overpowered as it sounds, a biscuit that has suddenly elemental properties. Honestly, it was funny more than anything, and it was charming. Like, his character helped people by feeding them treats, and he even used them as bargaining chips, quite literally. He was like, yes, would you do it for 1 Jaffa cake? How about 2 Jaffa cakes? And he would be such an interesting character. So, I mean, that's probably my favorite introduction to a character.
That's amazing. That would definitely be an eye-opener. How about you, Ben? What's your most memorable character?
To bring up. One is a story, which it's the absurd, and it was just because everyone was like, all the players had really funny reactions off of him, but also the GM was in on it, and so he made it so that way I went last in the character introduction, and then I got that big long story. And the GM was sitting there where he had his hands up and he was counting all the classes. And he was going like this. And in addition, what happened was we were keeping a secret, so there was a funny conversation that didn't make it into the video where one of the players was like, oh, Ben's playing a fighter because he always plays fighters. I'm like, ha ha ha, kind of.
No.
I didn't say anything. I was like, ha ha ha. But anyway, that was a funny character introduction. Another story which I have not told was that I played a character named Minron, who is a Minotaur, and what happened is that there was another guy who had made his character, and I kind of helped him work on it, and we had made it so that way he was like a really powerful striker class, and this was 4th edition, and it was like, ooh, we'll do this, and we managed. We were actually min-maxing it. We're new, and so we're like, oh, we're gonna min-max it maximum damage. And so very first introduction, I wanted to see how the class worked, and so I like we're still sitting before the game, and I challenged him to a fight. I'm like, yeah, let's go. And so he rolls first die crit. Damn it. So I take all this damage, and I'm playing as a warden, so I'm like, I can take that, and I take a bunch of damage. And then my attack 2, his attack crit, take a bunch of damage. And 3, and then he rolls, and another crit. He rolled 3 on his attack and actually downed my character. And so I'm like, then his twin brother, also called Minron, comes in. And so I ended up playing as the twin brother of Minron instead of Minron that night. The twin brother, who is also called Minron and is also a warden.
That reminds me of Tim Sir and Tom Sir. Literally started on. Gosh. And then he died, and then it was like, and his brother appears. So yeah, we've had that as well.
There was another storyline, which is not. I'm trying to think. There was another story. Was one of the players wanted to play as a captain. He's like, "Ooh, I'm going to be playing as a captain," and he's like, "I wear red." He's Captain Valentine and Maximilian Valentine, and he has a big hat and everything. And because he made his character first, all the other characters made characters that revolved around his. Like, oh yeah, I'm the first mate. I kind of help him out and run the ship. Oh, I'm kind of the person who does this and like helps. I'm kind of the transport because I can teleport and stuff like that. And they basically made characters that revolved around his characters and all were thematically tied to him. And then in the game, they all were very differential and referred to him as captain and stuff. And it was very interesting because I'd never really seen that kind of dynamic. Most of the time, like, oh, I'm going to be the captain. It's like, hey, stop it. You can't do that. Okay, they're another player. I can't tell them what to do. And whereas with him, because he started like saying, I'm going to make a captain, everyone had made characters around his. And so they're all thematically tied. And it made a great dynamic to that game.
That's so cool. That is just so cool.
Well, thank you both again. Thank you so much. The next episode we're going to do, podcast-wise, is what is a GM or a DM and what your role is. But again, we'll talk about that later. Who's going to be in that podcast and when it'll be. But yeah, thank you both. Thank you, Joe. Joe, do you have anything to promote before we send you off?
I've already shamelessly plugged enough.
Animite Tales all over the place today.
Yeah, I will say, come check out the Animite Tales and the Baytarans at Facebook, Twitter, or on Patreon. If you want to know more about the game, or even want to be one of the playtesters, at the moment we're currently sorting out a system where if you are one of the first few of the patrons, there's a certain tier system, but if you're one of the patrons, you actually get to playtest with us, and it could even potentially be in one of the current ones that we have with Des, Dune, myself, and a couple of other people who are currently doing it. So yeah, just drop over there and come and have fun.
Thank you. Ben, do you have any new videos you'd like to promote other than the one you just released about the Lord of the Rings and our group?
I did actually release another video recently, which was on GMing advice, which was DM discussion.
Oh, right.
That one was actually, I was talking about the differences between movies and RPGs. And the clip notes of that is basically that there's a level of polish that you see in movies where they hand them a script, they write stuff in, they cut stuff out, and we don't get that in RPGs. And so because we can't polish things, it has to have kind of a more natural, improvised flow. But anyway, I did an entire video on that.
Yeah. So when did you release that?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Oh, right. Well, I'm going to go watch that right now. Everybody go watch that right now. Right.
I've already watched it. Yeah.
Bye, guys.